we want to be just in the land rental business. We don't want to be in the business of taking phone calls about clogged toilets or broken air conditioning or roofs leaking or anything like that. At that point, you might as well own an apartment complex is kind of how we think about it.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com. Hello and welcome to episode 181. Today, we're going to talk about mobile home park investing, and I'm excited to have a renowned expert on the subject here with me today on the show. Many of you know Kevin Bupp from his podcast, Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow. Kevin's a serial entrepreneur with over 100 million in transactions, including apartments, single-family homes, office buildings, raw land, condos, and his favorite, mobile home parks. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Brian, thanks for having me.
I'm real excited to have you on the show today because I know you are the guy on mobile home park investing. Definitely we'll be talking about that during the show, but I'd love to get a little bit of background for those of our listeners who don't know anything about you.
Sure, absolutely. And thank you again for having me on the show. Very much looking forward to this. I'll try to keep this as condensed as possible. I'm 39 years old now. I've been investing in real estate. I bought my first single family property back when I was 20 years old, kind of tripped into the business by accident, got introduced to it by a gentleman that lived in the city where I grew up, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. He was a local real estate investor, owned single family and small multifamily property, and essentially saw maybe some promise in me being a 19-year-old at that time, and ultimately took me underneath his wing and kind of showed me the ropes, at least in the residential space. And that was really the start of it. I was still going to college at the time, attending bar part-time at night to kind of pave my way, and followed him around for about a year before I bought my first property at the age of 20. That was a single-family row home in downtown Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Very rough property, scary part of town. Probably wouldn't buy it again today, but ultimately cut my teeth there. Continued doing that for a number of years. Moved to Florida back in the early 2000s. Built a fairly large single-family home rental portfolio and a multifamily portfolio here in Southwest Florida. And got crushed pretty hard by the recession in 2007, 2008, and started back over in the 2011 era and started buying mobile home parks. I think I bought my first one back in 2012 and haven't looked back since. And that's all we focus in today. We're in 13 different states. And when I dive into a particular niche, I like to focus on it and become the master at it. And that's what we've done with mobile home parks, and have built quite a successful business out of buying opportunities in this space. Lots of them are value add type opportunities where we go in and we see the upside value, and we basically execute on the business plan and realize it sometimes a couple months, sometimes a couple of years down the road. And that's I tried to give you the very condensed version, Brian, to be respectful of your listeners' time, but that's 19 years in a nutshell. Additionally, I've had other businesses outside of real estate, but real estate's always been my core. It's really been the 99% focus. All the other side businesses have really been just that, side businesses.
Well, yeah, and thanks for that quick synopsis of your career. With all your real estate experience, and you've done just about everything, why did you focus on mobile home park investing as the niche that you really wanted to be in?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It seems like a lot of things that happen in my life happened by accident. I'm not necessarily looking for them at that point in time. And mobile home parks happened to be one of those things. It took me a couple of years to recover after the crash happened, and I was financially distressed personally, and just dealing with lots of challenges with my portfolio that just had gone through some challenging times in 2007, 2008, and the years following. But ultimately, around 2011, I knew that I wanted to really dive back in heavy into real estate, and I knew that I didn't want to buy single family homes any longer. It just I wanted to be able to rebuild the business and scale it faster than what I had prior. And I knew that, the amount of time and effort and energy that it took for me to build what was 122 single family homes, and then, about 500 apartment units. It took me many years of, 70 to 80 hour weeks. I wasn't married, didn't have kids or anything like that at that point. And now in this new stage of my life, back in 2011, I had met a woman that I ultimately married. We were talking about having kids, starting a family, and I didn't want to be the guy that spent 70, 80, 90 hours a week. I wanted to actually enjoy my time with her and actually enjoy my time with my children when they were born, right? And so, I looked back at what had gone wrong in the years prior and what I would have done differently. And there's many things that I would have done differently, but one of the big ones that really stuck out is, multifamily versus residential. And this isn't shooting down residential at all. It's just from a scalability factor. I saw that was a way that I can much quicker get to my ultimate end goal is by scaling with multifamily versus buying one home at a time. And then so during, the span of deciding that I wanted to really rebuild with multifamily, I was talking to everyone I could, Brian, that either made it through the downturn, that owned multifamily, that were full-time investors, or maybe had just gotten in at the bottom and were buying, the distressed properties that were out there available. And I wanted to really find out from them how the landscape had changed, because I stepped away for about 3 years, from 2008 to 2011. I really stepped away and didn't really want to think too much about real estate at that time. It was a really challenging time for me personally, and so I wanted to know how the landscape changed. Financing had changed drastically from what it was prior to the recession to post-recession. There was lots of distress still out in the streets. Again, the whole game had changed. And so during this journey of mine, I was introduced by a mutual friend to a gentleman by the name of Randy. Randy owned mobile home parks. He had been in the business for about 30 years on the finance side, retired from the bank that he had been working for, and started buying mobile home communities here in Florida. And I had no interest in Randy's business. I had no interest really in mobile home parks. I'm very open-minded, and I'm always receptive to new ideas and new business opportunities. And so my idea was that I was just going to have lunch with Randy just to meet someone new, right? I'm a firm believer that your net worth is your network. And so I wanted to have lunch with Randy just to have a good conversation with another business owner and get to meet someone new. And during this, what turned into be about a 2-hour lunch meeting with Randy, he was kind of asking about me. I was asking about him. I learned that he was, owned, I think, 3 parks at that time. And he knew that I was looking to start buying larger multifamily properties. And he essentially just went on and started comparing the two, giving me his kind of opinion on why his niche that he chose was so much better than apartment complexes. And I sat and I listened, and I listened and I listened and I listened. And after 2 hours of lunch with Randy and him, not necessarily shooting down multifamily, but just really opening my eyes to the additional benefits that exist in the mobile home park space, I walked out of that lunch meeting and essentially made myself a promise, and that I was going to give myself a year to learn everything I could about his niche and buy a mobile home park. I was going to buy one and either prove or disprove his concept as to, is this a good investment? Is it something that's scalable? Is it something that I want to be in for the long term? And that's what I did, Brian. It took me a little bit more than 12 months, it took me about 14 months to buy that first property. And we haven't looked back since. So we bought that first one as a very distressed bank-owned deal in Atlanta. We still own it today. And bought another one after that, bought another one. And today we're in 13 states, expanding rapidly. And we're 100% focused in the mobile home park niche.
Wow, great. And I want to get into those. I want to get into some specific examples.
Yeah.
You said a couple of things that I want to kind of repeat. One is you said you're a firm believer that your net work is your net worth. And I think I
the other way around.
Quote. Oh, the other way around. Your net worth is your network.
Is your network. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, either way, it's a great
quote.
So.
No, it's just, you got to surround yourself by others that are doing what you want to do, and you just never know where that one conversation that you have. Again, I had no interest in meeting with Randy about mobile home parks. I wasn't going into it saying, oh, I can't wait to talk to this guy. He's in the business I want to be in. I was just going to meet someone new. He had been successful in his own career. He was recommended to me as just being a good guy by a good friend of mine, a mutual friend of ours. And so, I didn't know where it would go from there, but ultimately it changed the trajectory of my life at that point. So that little meeting that I wasn't all that excited about turned into something completely different, right? It's had a major impact on my life.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. I'd like to talk about your conversation with Randy, though. You said he kind of went through point by point as to why mobile home park investing was superior to multifamily. And I'm wondering if you remember any of that conversation and those points, and if you can share them with us.
I surely do, because again, I was on a mission to kind of either disprove or prove this concept and all these points that he was trying to sell me on. And, just a couple of them that really caught my attention were, number one, we all know there's a huge demand for affordable housing, right? There really is an affordable housing crisis in this country, and we're not meeting the demand. So mobile home parks really help fill that void. So that was a big one, but that wasn't the biggest by any means. One of the others were the returns that can be expected on mobile home parks. And this is assuming that you buy right, but if you took any given city in the U.S. and you took let's say the equivalent, a Class C apartment complex in the same part of town as, maybe a 2.5 star, which would be equivalent to maybe a C-class apartment complex, so like a 2.5 star mobile home park, and then looked at the two and you actually paid fair market value for each one, you should be able to expect a yield premium or return premium on the mobile home park over that apartment complex. So if you're going to pay a 6 cap for the apartment complex, again, if you're buying right, today it's a little tighter, but I would still expect to maybe be able to pick up that mobile home park at a 7 or maybe even a 7.5 cap. Again, every circumstance is a little different, but you should expect a higher return on mobile home parks. That's slowly getting compressed as people find out about this niche as we have conversations like this one, and I let out all the secrets of why we like the niche. But in any event, the returns are typically higher. One of the other big components is there's a massive barrier to entry that exists in our niche, in that it's the only mobile home parks are the only asset class that have a diminishing supply, meaning that there's more mobile home parks that get torn down or redeveloped for a higher and better use each and every year than that are actually built. And the unique thing about that is that when we buy a mobile home park in a good market that's in a good school district that has a high demand for affordable housing, what we don't have to worry about is a new mobile home park being developed down the road. And there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, mobile home parks have a bad stigma attached to them. It is what it is. Everyone associates the word trailer trash or white trash with mobile home parks, and that ultimately can be the case. But there's many different flavors of mobile home parks. There are the really low end, rough, bad clientele, wrong side of town, wrong side of the tracks type mobile home parks. There's, the middle grade, which are blue collar, hardworking families that want to send their kids to good schools. They want to provide. They want to put food on the table, right? They're just the good-hearted souls of America here. And then you've got the A class or the white collar folks. We've got that same thing in the mobile home park space as you might find in the apartment space. The apartment space, you've got the A class, you've got the middle class, and you've got the really low-end apartment complexes that you wouldn't want to send your worst enemy into at nighttime. And so. But with that, I know that, but cities and municipalities don't know that, Brian, and they still have, no matter when they hear the word mobile home park, they think of the trailer trash side of it. And so getting permitting for a new mobile home park to be built is nearly impossible. There was, I think the statistics I have are about 12 mobile home parks were built over the past 3 years. That's it. And there were hundreds that were redeveloped for higher and better uses, or just shut down due to maybe health standards or whatever it might be. And so the barriers to entry are just absolutely massive. Another big attraction to us was the low turnover rate when compared to a normal rental whether it be apartment or single family home. When an individual rents a home or a single family, a home or an apartment, they can get up and leave quite easily. I mean, you could essentially pack up your Suburban or whatever you have and be gone in a day if you wanted to be. In a mobile home park, they own the home, and you can't just hook these mobile homes up to a pickup truck and drive them away. It's a much more of a process than that. There's specialty licensed movers. These things are tied down to the ground. They weigh a ton. You need a semi truck to move them, and it's quite expensive. It costs about $5,000 to move a single wide, and about double that for a double wide. And the typical person that lives in a mobile home park normally doesn't have $5,000 or $10,000 laying around to move their home to another community. And so what you find is that when a resident wants to move out of one of our communities, what they do is they put their home up for sale, just like they would in a normal subdivision. They put it up for sale. They continue paying their lot rent. The home sells. New buyer comes in, basically takes over the responsibility of paying that lot rent, and things go on. We move on. But we never have a point in time where we have a loss of revenue on the owner side, because we continually have someone paying that lot rent. Where in an apartment or a home, you've got the person that moves out. You got the downtime to, number one, make ready that unit, and also then release it, find a new tenant to take that place. And that could be 2 months, maybe even longer, to where you don't have revenue and it's costing you money to get that unit back up and running. So that's another big attraction to me, was the low turnover that you have. And in addition to that, you get a sense of pride of ownership in a lot of communities that you just won't ever get in an apartment complex, right? And we've got some residents that have lived in our communities for 25 plus years. I mean, way longer than what we've owned these communities. They've lived there for a very long time. To them, it's their own neighborhood. It's their subdivision. They take pride of ownership in their unit. They plant flowers outside. They got flags. They put up decorations for the holidays. They care about their neighbors. They look after their neighbors, right? You get a sense of community and pride of ownership that, again, it's really hard to achieve that in a normal rental unit that has a transient tenant base. Let's think of some of the other big ones here. The management intensity of a mobile home park is typically much less than that of an apartment complex. Again, we don't own the units, and so we're only responsible, being the owners of that park. We're responsible for the infrastructure, and that means the roads, the sewer lines, the water lines, and the common areas. The residents themselves are responsible for their own units, and so if a pipe breaks in their unit, or if their air conditioning goes out, or their roof leaks, they're not calling us. They're getting in the yellow pages or getting on Google, and they're actually calling a local service provider to come fix that, whatever that issue might be. They're not calling us and telling us to send out the maintenance guy. So the management intensity of a 100-unit mobile home park in comparison to like a 100-unit apartment building, it's night and day difference. Those are just some of the big points. There's many more, but those are some of the really big ones that Randy kind of pitched me that it just had my eyes and my ears wide open.
If you are thinking of leaving your W-2 job and becoming a full-time real estate investor, one of the greatest costs you must consider is healthcare for you and your family. When I made this transition 5 years ago, I found the whole healthcare insurance process to be confusing and frustrating. That's why I'm glad I met Chad Creasy at RCB and Associates. Chad is a professional healthcare insurance agent who helps real estate investors and small business owners understand and choose their best healthcare options. And best of all, his services are covered by the insurance company and won't cost you a dime. If you are expecting a change in your healthcare insurance coverage for any reason, or losing employer coverage, or transitioning into Medicare, then you owe it to yourself to contact Chad Creasy at rcbassociatesllc.com. Those are all really compelling points. I'd imagine, the management issues may not be so much around doing repairs on the units, but more on just the people management. Can you talk about that a little bit? Just what it takes
absolutely.
To manage people who live in these communities.
Well, and it goes back to, it depends on what kind of quality community you own, right? If you choose to own a trailer park that's full of felons and drugs, sex, and rock and roll, if that's truly what you choose to own, which they're out there and those people need roofs over their heads as well, it's going to be a fight and a battle every month when rent's due, right? You're going to be dealing with a rough tenant base, and the same exists if you have a lower end apartment complex, right? You're going to be battling month after month to collect rents. It's going to be a matter of pounding on doors. The same exists in both sides of the equation. we typically cater to the middle to higher end road. And so we have a lot of parks that cater to good hardworking folks that are in good school districts. They have maybe combined household incomes of between, 36 maybe to $60,000 a year. So they just want the best for their kids. They want to raise them in a clean, safe, and quiet environment. And they want to pay their bills on time for the most part. Most of them do. There's obviously always a few that don't, that you have to battle with. But for the most part, as long as you're good at screening your residents, which we are, we've got a pretty black and white policy in place. Collections, I wouldn't say that they're easy, but it's no different than it would be with the collections process in a single-family residential B-class neighborhood or an apartment B-class apartment type neighborhood. So very much the same. And then in the A-class, we've got a few communities that are very, I wouldn't say they're high-end because that's it kind of contradicts itself, but they cater to a higher end clientele. The units in these parks that we own that are higher end maybe sell for between $70,000 and $100,000. And so they're folks that want to live in a community. A lot of them are retirees. They're on fixed incomes. The rent collections in those communities is phenomenal. They're mature residents. They pay like clockwork, and very rarely do we have a challenge with collecting from them. So to speak to your point of the challenge of dealing with the resident base, it really comes down to the operator. How good of a job is the operator doing at screening and choosing the right tenant base for their respective community? So.
Yeah, absolutely. So you did a great job of kind of breaking down your conversation with Randy and the reasons for investing in mobile home parks. Tell us how that all ended up working out with your first acquisition.
Yeah. So again, I told you, I kind of gave myself 12 months to go find one and dig in and learn as much as I could about the business. And that's what I did. I scoured through, at that point it was LoopNet, looking for deals, calling on, all the different leads, talking to brokers, and just also doing as much education as I could. There wasn't a lot of education materials, and there still isn't in this niche. So there are just a few books, a few folks that are teaching it, and I went into their classes. I read the books. I talked to other operators just to better understand this niche. Randy was a big help during this process. But I ultimately found a park in Atlanta. It was a very, very distressed park. It was a bank REO, and actually, I'm sorry, it was still in the receivership stage. It had been in receivership for like 2.5 years. And so it was incredibly distressed, had been vandalized, had squatters living in some of the units. I mean, it was about as bad as it could possibly get. It was in a good part of town, so it wasn't on the wrong side of the tracks, but it had a really bad reputation. Actually, a horrible, probably of all the parks we bought to date, had the worst reputation, which was one of the hard challenges we had in turning it around. But ultimately, we bought it. We essentially kicked basically everyone out that was in there. Every person, either the people that were living there, they were deadbeats and they weren't paying, or the other folks that were living there weren't even allowed to be. They were squatters, right? And so we kicked everyone out. We became really good friends with the chief of police and the mayor and the code enforcement, making sure that they were aware that we were going to come in and make things better. They didn't believe us at first. They put up some friction initially because they were very upset about how this thing had gone for many years past. But ultimately, they became allies of ours, and they saw us slow but surely make improvements, renovate units, attract good people into the community. We changed the name of it. We did a bunch of landscaping to try to rebrand the place. And it took us about a year of rehabbing every single unit that was in there, selling them off, finding good tenants or buyers to come in and buy those units, and truly get rid of the negative stigma attached to it before we had a stabilized park in our hands. So it was about a 12 to 14 month process, lots of blood, sweat, and tears. And ultimately, I even had the mayor, who wasn't a big fan of ours initially because he thought we were just going to be slumlords and run it like the last guy. He wrote me a letter of recommendation and called me personally and thanked me for what we had done for the community. And local newspapers came in and did stories about it. And it was a very rewarding experience to take a very blighted piece of this town and one that was a drain on local resources and turned it into something that everyone was proud of. So, and we've done that time and time again. So that was the first park, and one of many to come.
Wow. So, and you've been able to repeat that experience, 13 times?
Well, we're in 13 states. No, we've done it many
states.
more than, we're in 13 states. I think we've I don't know the exact number, probably in the low 20 range of how many communities that we've actually owned or operated. I think today we own 16 communities. So somewhere in the mid 20s, I think is how many we've owned. We've sold a few over the years. I actually did not do the exact number there, but we own 16 today while we're in 13 different states. We have sold off some of our assets over the last couple of years, but we've got another 5 in contract right now, and we're looking to buy more, looking to expand.
What do you look for when you're researching for these types of properties? I mean, what are some of the things that you want to see in a mobile home park that you might acquire?
Yeah, well, first and foremost is the location. You can fix you can fix the physical aspects of any property, but you can't fix a location. And so you can have the prettiest park in town with the white picket fence and the beautiful landscaped entrance and all brand new units. But if it's literally in the wrong side of the tracks, that's all you're going to attract. If it's in the worst school district in the area, that's who you're going to attract. You're going to attract the people that don't care about education, don't care about their children or the future of their children, right? And so the first and foremost is location. We want to know that it's in a good school district, it's in a good part of town, it's in the path of progress. Because we can take a blighted community and we can get rid or eradicate the bad aspects and the bad elements out of it. We know if we fix it up properly, we can attract those good folks, the good, hardworking people that want the best for their families or for themselves. And so location. We want to know that it's in an area that's growing, that's got economic stability, diversity of employment. We typically look at metros that are, metropolitan areas that are 100,000 of population or greater, which, 100,000 is a very small metro. What else are we looking for? We're looking at, we compare ourselves to, okay, what's the median home price in that given market? Also, what are the median apartment rents? We want to make sure that we're not competing against stick-built homes. And so there's certain parts of the country where you can go buy a stick-built home for $50,000. Well, that would be a very challenging market for us to go into and actually compete because there's already affordable housing there. The entire towns are affordable, right? Or where apartments might rent for $400 or $500 a month. There's many areas like that in the country still. And it'd be very hard for us to be competitive and offer a compelling sale in that market because, again, to me, it doesn't seem like there's a demand for affordable housing. So we want to know that we're at least 30 or 40% below what the comparable apartments are renting for in any given marketplace. So if the average 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom apartment's renting for $1,000 a month, we want to know that if we come in there, that we can easily market our units at, let's say, $600 a month, and we can offer the same it's the same value, but a much more bang for their buck. So same size unit. They get their own roof over their head, get their own parking spots, and literally the same amenities that they might get in the apartment for 30 or 40% less than what they might pay in an apartment complex, and also give them the opportunity to actually own the home.
Well, what are some of the things that you would rather avoid when you're looking to acquire these properties? That might make you say, you know what, I'm going to take a pass on this one.
Yeah, there's lots of things. I can give you some real life examples. We just killed a couple deals very recently. One deal that we killed was up in Michigan, and what we had under contract for and how it was operating today was great. It supported what we were paying for it, but we also look at what the future holds for this property, kind of what are we going to do in 5 years or 10 years? And this particular community had about half of it was full of newer mobile homes that were nice, and the other half was full of really old, 60s and 70s models that were kind of rough, kind of in bad shape. The people that were living in them were fairly older in age. They had lived there for 20, 30 years. And so it had a really old resident base, which is good because it's mature and they pay on time, but it's bad in that, I'm not going to say that they're going to all die, but I mean, a lot of them are at the age where they're going to be passing and their units were basically worth zero. The units were that old that they really weren't worth anything. And so we knew that we would be responsible over the next 5 and 10 years for, as these folks would pass or move on to the next stage of their life, that we would ultimately accumulate these old homes that we'd have to demo and bring new homes in. Well, the big challenge with this park was it's not the idea that we were going to end up with their homes and we'd have to bring new homes in. It's that the lots, back when this park was built, the lots were really small. And so back then, back in the 60s, the lots were small and the mobile homes were small. Setback requirements and things of that nature weren't the same as what they are today. Well, we have to conform with today's new code when we bring a new home in, and these lots were too small for us to bring a standard size single wide mobile home and a newer model single wide mobile home. And so we would be stuck in that park with these, I think there was about 20 of these old homes. Assuming that, let's say, half of them pass in the next 5 or 10 years, we'd be stuck with 10 either really old homes that no one wants or 10 lots that we essentially couldn't fit a new home on. And so our revenue would go down over time because of the density of this park. It was the lot sizes were too small. So that's just one of many examples of why we might not buy a park. It's not today because it operates fine today and it makes enough money. But what does the future look like? And are we going to run into barriers or challenges based on maybe the current layout or the size of the lots that are there, or the infrastructure?
That is a great example, and I guess it would take some experience and knowledge to have the foresight to realize, hey, it's great now, but in 5-10 years, we're going to have to deal with these too small lots.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great example. But it brings up a question then about just when you buy the mobile home park, you're buying the infrastructure and the land. Then you have homeowners who actually own the mobile homes that are on your land and on the lots. Mm-hmm. Do you ever purchase those homes as well and rent them out, or do you try to make it so that your owners actually own the home themselves and take care of it themselves?
Yeah, in a perfect world, Brian, we wouldn't own any of the homes. It would just be homeowners that rent the dirt from us or rent the lot, and that's it. But you and I both know we don't live in a perfect world, and so we do own, I don't know the exact number, probably about between 100 and 150 mobile homes in and throughout the different parks that we have. We have a number of parks that we don't own any of the homes, 0, and then we have other communities where we might own 15 or 20. And it just really depends on, a lot of it depends on the prior ownership, who the person who we bought it from, kind of what their model was and how they ran it. Because what occurs over time is as folks might pass, or let's say they need to move, they got a job relocation, they can't afford to move their home, or maybe if they're going out of state, they don't have time to sell it, they don't want to relocate it, and they just basically abandon it sometimes, which is crazy to think that someone might walk away from a home that's worth $15,000 or $20,000. But a lot of times that happens, and if that does happen, then what we do as park owners is we'll go back through we'll go through what's called an abandoned title process. It's personal property, so it's just like if someone left a car in your yard. If your car gets towed to the impound yard and you don't go get it, at some point that car becomes the actual the tow yard's car, not yours anymore. They take rights to the title of it. Well, we do the same thing in our space. So we do run through situations where we accumulate mobile homes, but our end goal is to create homeowners. And so if we acquire a home, we don't do a straight rental on it. What we'll do is either find someone to buy it from us for cash. We'll give them a very good deal. We'll discount it because we know once they live in it, they're more than likely staying for a long time. They're not leaving. So we don't have a lot of turnover when they own the home. And so we'll either try to sell it for cash, or if we find that it's a market that we're having a struggle finding cash buyers in, then we'll do a creative financing structure like similar to like a rent to own program, giving them the ability to come in and put a down payment or an option deposit down and pay it off over a period of time, whether it be 3, 5, 7 years, depending on the unit. So to answer your question, we don't do regular rentals, and when we do own units, we try to sell them back as fast as possible to the end user. Because we want to be just in the land rental business. We don't want to be in the business of taking phone calls about clogged toilets or, broken air conditioning or roofs leaking or anything like that. It just, at that point, you might as well own an apartment complex is kind of how we think about it.
I know you're acquiring the land and the infrastructure and the roads and everything. What are some of the things you have to look out for when it comes to utilities?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's an area where I see a lot of new folks in this business. They lose their they kind of lose their shirts sometimes. And infrastructure is a big deal. It's not that big of a deal if the utilities are public utilities, meaning that the municipality provides the water and sewer. The big deal and the risk comes into play, and this isn't to scare folks away because we own multiple parks that have private utilities, and for water that would be a well, and then for sewer it could be one of many things. The common types of private sewer in our niche are either septic systems. Individual septic systems are large capacity septic systems that feed the entire community. Another type of sewage system is a wastewater treatment plant, which is basically a miniature version of what most municipalities use to treat sewage for entire towns or cities. And then there's other systems like lagoon systems and a few other hybrids of the sewage treatment plant. But these private systems don't last forever. They have mechanical components, and they have other features that have a life expectancy and can be quite expensive to replace. There can also be restrictions or regulations that are changed due to the EPA and government to, for example, in the well water, you're basically providing drinking water to folks. There might be some hard minerals present now that aren't that big of a deal today, but 3 years from now, the EPA could change their standards, ultimately forcing you to drill a new well, put some very high-end expensive equipment in place to filter out those hard minerals that are there that need not to be present. With the sewage systems, wastewater treatment plants are very expensive. I've seen them cost upwards of $500,000. And if you buy a park that has a very old and aging system, then you're not aware that that thing has a life expectancy, and you get into it not planning for a very large CapEx expense a couple years down the road, and that thing fails, well, you could be in a situation where you're essentially having to rebuild the entire sewer plant and coming out of pocket with hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I've seen it happen. I've seen it play out many different times. I can even give you an example of a situation where I watched an investor essentially lose their entire investment in their park because of a unidentified sewer issue. It was a septic issue that they didn't pick up before they bought the park. And when they bought that community, they stole it. From the outside looking in, what they paid for it was an absolute home run, like kind of one of those, there's no way you can lose on this deal, like for what they paid for it. They got owner financing. I mean, it was a knock it out of the park home run. Well, this park was serviced by one large septic system that was ultimately gravity fed at the bottom of the park. There was, I think, about 50 units that flowed down to this master septic system. They hired a company, didn't verify that the company went out there to test the system before they bought the park, just assumed that they did. The system was never tested. Come to find out that the leach field there, one of the two leach fields was already failed. It wasn't working properly. There was an illegal discharge pipe plugged into the side of the septic tank that was basically ejecting raw sewage out into the back of this park, and the EPA got notified and essentially came in and either you shut down the park or you have to essentially pump this big septic tank every day, which would have cost about $20,000 a month to do that, to pump it and dispose of it. Literally get a septic truck in there every day to pump 50 homes worth of sewage every day and transport it off site to dispose of it. And again, for that person, it was a no lose endeavor for what they paid for that park, but it wasn't sustainable. There was no backup option, and they lost it. They lost everything that they put into it. So
what's the lesson there? Inspect your septic system
and inspect your septic. Get a reputable company to do it. Verify that they've done it. Get a report. Get an engineering company. Get a local septic company. Get an engineering firm out there. Like again, a reputable one. Don't just get the guy that owns Joe Bob's Septic Pumping. That told you that he went out there. Like get a real report from a licensed and insured company. Be there yourself and be there with the inspectors if you can be. Get 3 people to go check. Do as much as you can to verify and get confirmation in writing from reputable licensed folks that the system is in good working order. And if it's not, find out exactly what it's going to need, what the life expectancy is of it, and ultimately what kind of future reserves you might need to be setting aside for those types of repairs that they're going to come down the pike. So that's it. I mean, we own multiple parks that have private utilities, septics, we have wells, we have a wastewater treatment plant. We've got all these different types. And we spend a good bit of money on our due diligence. I mean, we hire the right folks. We don't try to skimp. We don't try to pinch pennies. We pay engineers lots of money to give us peace of mind and make sure that we sleep at night, both ourselves and also our investors. Make sure that we're being, we're fiduciary responsible for our investors' money, and it's up to us to make sure that we figure out what the skeletons are before the skeletons jump out and grab us. So, in any event, hire the right professionals to do that job for you.
Any other pitfalls that potential buyers should be aware of?
Expensive. Yeah, and another one is you find quite often that a lot of these parks are owned by mom and pops. They've been kind of running it like a mom and pop business for many years. They're not the best bookkeepers. They've been kind of doing it their way. A lot of them don't use computers even still, which is pretty crazy. But, verifying the books and the records and verifying the expenses, like don't take what's given to you as face value, like verify it. Verify it with bank deposits. If their profit and loss is showing X amount of revenue collected, verify it. Get bank deposits, get proof that that money is really there. I mean, it's pretty easy to cook books, especially if they're handwritten books, right? It's pretty easy for an owner to cook their books, and I've seen it happen many times. You also want to verify, if they got residents in that park, have they done background checks on them? Or do they have a screening process in place? Or just because it's got 100 residents today, for all you know, it had only 70 12 months ago, and they filled in the other 30 in the past 12 months just because they knew they were going to sell it. And they literally, if you could fog a mirror, they let the person move in. So just because you got 100 bodies there, what you think are paying rent, you find out after the fact that they've literally just kind of pumped and dumped this thing. They put anyone in that wanted to move in and got a higher price for it. And then now you're stuck with a bag, and now you got a lot of vacancies on your hand. I've seen that play out as well. So, we've seen situations where, it's more the old school mom and pop operators that, back in the day, I think your word meant a lot more than what it does in today's world. Unfortunately, I don't like that, but it just is what it is, to where, a handshake and meeting someone in person, you could really tell a lot from someone's about their character just by meeting them in person. A lot of these mom and pops operate still on that business model, to where maybe 30 years ago, they would just kind of meet somebody, they felt good about them, they let them move in, and that worked. But today they still do the same thing, and they end up with sex offenders, they end up with felons, because they're not doing background checks, they're not doing criminal checks, or they're not doing credit checks to see that the person literally just filed bankruptcy yesterday and or just had a foreclosure or something like that. So you just want to verify is what I'd say, Brian.
Do you teach a lot of this information through the Mobile Home Academy?
We do. We have an online training. We don't do like live boot camps or anything like that, but we do have a training, which is basically our business in a box. We've done a very good job over the last couple of years of really documenting all of our systems and processes, everything from how we identify a market and determine whether it's on a good market for owning a mobile home park in, and then how we find those mobile home parks, how we uncover the information for the owners, and the cell phone records, their home mailing address, how we contact them, how we negotiate it, how we underwrite the deals, and then all the way through the operations, like how we actually operate and manage these properties. So we do sell it. It's like a 6-week program online, and it's by far one of the most comprehensive educational programs out there in this niche. And we started it because there's only one other person out there even remotely teaching this investment niche, and they do it in the form of a boot camp. And there's only so much you can learn in a couple of days at a boot camp that we found that there was a lot of gaps there, and we ultimately had a lot of people coming to us saying, "Hey, like, show me, how are you guys finding these deals? That's one thing I don't know." Or how are you doing your underwriting? That's one thing I don't know that I didn't gather at this other boot camp. And so we started this program about 3 years ago, and it's been a huge hit.
Yeah. And how would people find out more information about that?
Yeah, they can go to our website, mobilehomeparkacademy.com. The name of the program is called Deal Finders Formula, and they can also go to that website directly. It's dealfindersformula.com, and give you kind of an overview of what you can expect to learn in that program, all the different chapters involved, the different modules, and there's a money-back guarantee as well. So if it's not a good fit for you and you realize that after you bought it, you dig into it for a week or so, 100% money-back guarantee. So again, it's really our business in a box. It's everything we do here at Sunrise Capital Investors. And we've got a lot of great feedback on it. Lots of folks, a lot of students that are out there buying parks because of it.
Well, I'll make sure that information is in the show notes. And as we wrap it up, Kevin, what advice would you have for listeners out there who are interested in getting into this area and they want to take that next step? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I'd say probably where I would start, just because there's so much free information out there today. I also have another podcast, which is called the Mobile Home Park Investing Podcast. I've been doing that for about 3 years now, and it's free. And we've got, I think, about 104 or 105 episodes. Lots of very granular content there. There's a number of episodes, probably about 20 of them, where just me and my partner kind of go into different aspects of our business, provide case studies. with a very granular approach as to the step-by-steps of what we've done and how we do it. So I would actually, before anyone spends any money buying our program or going to someone else's boot camp, go set aside hours in your day or in your week, in your month, and listen to that podcast. I mean, there's over 100 hours of content there, and it's all free. And I think you'll find after listening to enough episodes, you'll determine at that point, is this even a good fit for you? Like, is this niche something that you actually want to spend money and time on, right? And at that point, you can make a better informed decision. So that's where I would start if I was in someone else's shoes that's wondering if this might be a good fit for them.
Yeah, that's the beauty of podcasts. They're free.
Yeah, exactly.
When you and I were starting out, we didn't have the benefit of free podcasts. So
no, we had to go buy programs on cassette tape for those folks that don't know what that is, right?
I still have some of them on my shelf here.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Kevin, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us about mobile home park investing. It's really been an interesting conversation about what I consider to be a very exciting niche in real estate investing. And I appreciate you sharing your stories and your expertise with us.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, Brian. This has been an absolute pleasure, and I'm glad that you gave me the chance to speak to your audience about our niche of mobile home park investing. It's been a lot of fun.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's higinvestor.com. And you can also ask questions and join us on Facebook by going to RPOA, Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast. This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.